You may. Is that plastic coated, John? That's painted. Okay. Since we're talking about circumference today, it's important that you know what the radius, the diameter, and the circumference are in a circle. And a radius is a line segment that has one endpoint at the center and goes to the outside edge. In other words, it's halfway across the circle. A diameter is a segment that passes through the center, but both endpoints are actually on the circle. So the diameter is the distance all the way across the circle. What can you tell me about the diameter compared to the radius? The radius is half of the diameter, or the radius is the diameter divided by 2. Okay? So it's important that we can make that connection. The circumference is the distance around the outside of the circle. It's very similar to perimeter. Perimeter is the distance around the outside of a non-circular object. And the reason they use circumference, a different word, is because circumference is always around a circle, and there's a specific way to calculate that distance. I can no longer add up sides because how many sides does a circle have?
0.
None, really. There's a side there to count. So I can't add up all the sides like I think of adding up the perimeter. So they give us a formula. In fact, there's a pair of formulas. These two formulas you need to make sure that you're writing down on a separate sheet. Write them down. C equals pi d, or pi times diameter. And C equals 2 pi r. Two separate formulas, both meaning the exact same thing. They give us two different formulas because sometimes inside of the circle they give me the diameter and I can just plug it into this formula. Sometimes they give me the radius and I can just plug it into this formula. So I would be able to use one or the other. And you notice that they're taking pi d, but they're taking 2 times r. And if I took 2 times r, it would give me the diameter anyway, wouldn't it? So, the most important thing about today's lesson is right here. Circumference equals pi times diameter. Circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius. That's what the two formulas mean. And remember, circumference would be, if I were going to pick a point on this circle, and I were going to start walking all the way around, circumference is how far I walked from point A all the way back around to point A. All the way around the outside of that circle. Circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius. Questions about the two formulas that are there?
So circumference equals
2 times r times also what? Pi. 3.14 or 22 over 7 are the two numbers that we're going to use for pi. Pi. Pi looks like this. And this pi is not spelled P-I-E. If you wanted to spell it, it's spelled P-I. Questions so far? The most important part of today's lesson is learning the formula. Everything from the formula is number crunching on a calculator. We're going to plug numbers into the formula to calculate circumference, or we're going to plug in a circumference to find a diameter or a radius. Everything is going to be based off of that formula. Questions? Can I go forward? Okay. Now, nowhere do you see this, so write this down underneath your two formulas. Pi is equal to 3.14 or 22 over 7. And notice that I didn't really put an equal sign there. I put a squiggly equal sign there. Why is there a squiggly equal sign versus a straight equal sign?
Because it's repeated.
You're on the right track, but not quite right. It's not exact. It's approximately equal to. And it's important to know that pi is an irrational number. And by irrational, it means that if I divided it out and I could find the exact value of pi, that at some point in time that it would end or it would repeat. But pi itself never ends and never repeats. We just use these as approximations of pi. And there is sometimes where I want to use 22 over 7 versus 3.14. And I'll explain why the difference and why I might want to use one versus the other. 22 over 7 is just a little bit closer to the actual value of pi, by the way. So if I wanted a more accurate answer, I should use 22 over 7 all the time. But there are times when there's a reason for using 22 over 7 because it's actually easier to do the math. The fractional part will disappear using 22 over 7 on some instances. Questions about what pi is? We're either going to use 3.14 or we're going to use 22 over 7. If a problem does not specify what to use, pick one. Use whatever you want to use. Have you ever seen one of the problems on a standardized test that said, use 3.14 for the value of pi? Has anybody ever seen something like that? Okay. May not have shown up yet because we're just now covering what? Circles. If they tell you which to use, 3.14, or they tell you to use 22 over 7, and you don't use the one that they've specified, you're going to get the answer wrong. If they don't specify, you can use either one and your answer will be correct. Okay, questions? Okay. Look at page 266 then, where it says your turn, number 3. It says find the circumference of the circle to the nearest hundredth. Rounding is going to be important. It's also important to notice what they've given me and those units. We want to make sure that we're answering questions that way. What did they give me in the picture? The radius or the diameter? They gave me the diameter. They told me the diameter was equal to 11 centimeters. Which formula do I want to use then? Do I want to use C equals 2 pi r? Or do I want to use C equals pi d? I want to use pi d because they gave me a diameter for this problem. Okay? They did not
Now tell me which to use, 3.14 or 22/7. So I'm going to look at this diameter. If this diameter was 14, I'd use 22/7 because I could do all the math in my head. But this number isn't divisible by 7, is it? No. So I'm going to take 3.14 for pi, and I'm going to multiply it by 11. 3.14 times 11. And I get 34.54. And what should I label this? I should label it centimeters because it's a distance around the outside. Everybody okay? Should be pretty easy. If we flip to page 267, it says a circular garden has a circumference of 44 yards. They said I've got this circular garden, and that the circumference is equal to 44 yards. It says Lars is digging a straight line along the diameter of the garden. He's digging a straight line along the diameter. And he's digging at a rate of 7 yards per hour. And they want to know how long it's going to take him to dig the ditch. Okay? In order to figure out how long it's going to take him to dig the ditch, what do I got to find first? Not the radius, but the what? The diameter. I got to find out how long is this ditch that he's digging. Since I'm looking for the diameter, again, I want to use this formula, C equals pi times the diameter. What can I put in place of this C? 44. What can I put in place of pi? 3.14. And this would be the D. If I want to find the diameter then, how would I get D by itself? I divide by 3.14 on both sides. So the diameter is 14 yards. It actually came up to 14.01, but it's 14 yards. If he's digging at a rate of 7 yards per hour, how many hours is it going to take him to get there? 2 hours. I take 14 and divide it by the yards per hour, and it's going to take him 2 hours to get to the other side of the garden. Everybody okay? Understand? I heard an What don't you understand? Okay. What's the formula? Don't look at the board, look at me. What's the formula for circumference? Don't look at anything, look at me. I want anybody to look at the board. If I ask you a question, I want you to look at me. What's the circumference? Equals what? No. That's one of them. C equals pi times D. C equals 2 times pi times R. If you don't know those two separate things, then you really don't know anything about what we're talking about. Okay? Now, I know that I just introduced you to them, but it shouldn't be the first time you've ever seen it before. You should have seen the formulas for circumference at some point before getting to this class. Shouldn't be foreign to you. Those you absolutely have to memorize. Because I'm going to tell you, that's not even on the reference sheet. It's not written down anywhere, not even without anything beside it. This year when you get a reference sheet, it's like the one you use for your progress monitoring, which, by the way, you all did pretty well on, overall. And I can let you see how you did and how I graded it. It didn't have a negative effect on anybody's grade. Okay? Didn't affect anybody negatively. Didn't drop anybody or whatever. Towards the end of class, I can let you know how you did. Okay? The class did better than I anticipated, which is always a good thing. I expected a lot of people to be far below the normal. There were a few people that were below, a lot of people that were at the basic level. There was a few people that were actually above the basic level in this class. That's good. Okay? Basic is where the goal is for everybody to be at. Right there in the middle. That's the goal. There were a few people that were below it, but there was just as many people above it, so that's a good thing. We're going to go back to this problem. And they gave me the circumference. And they want to know how long it's going to take me to dig across the diameter. The first thing I got to do is figure out how far do I got to dig. What is the diameter? So in order to find the diameter, I use the formula. C equals pi d. What can I put in place of C? What did they tell me it was? 44 yards. The only other thing that I know for sure is the value of pi. What's the value of pi? 3.14. 44 equals 3.14 times d. D is being multiplied by 3.14. What's the opposite of multiplication? Division. Which is why I divided both sides by 3.14. When I did this division, the 44 divided by 3.14, it gave me 14 yards. In other words, from one side of the circle all the way to the other side of the circle is how far? It's how far? 14 yards. From here to here. They asked me how long did it take me to dig across it. If I'm digging 7 yards per hour, how far am I going to dig the first hour? 7 yards, halfway across. In the second hour, I'm going to dig how many yards? 7 more. So I'm going to have done 14 yards. I'm going to dig all the way across the circle at the end of 2 hours. But everything that we do today everything that we do today is based off of this. These two formulas. The reason I'd want to use 2 pi r is that they gave me the what? What does r stand for? Radius. The reason I'd want to use the other formula is if they gave me a diameter. It's the only reason I'm going to use it. Okay? Okay. Open up to where it's the assignment part. Typically where we do the assignment. We're going to look at 1 and 2 together. And the reason I'm doing 1 and 2 together is because on one of them I'm going to use 3.14. The other one I'm going to use what? 22/7. Notice, here they said C equals pi d. And the reason they used that formula is what did they give me in this picture? They gave me the diameter. They said the diameter was 9. Okay? So, C is approximately, notice they put approximately equal to the little squiggly line, because what am I going to replace pi with? 3.14. And what am I going to replace d with? 9. And I'm going to multiply those. The section is, it's not hard once you've got the numbers. If you know the formula, you just put numbers in formula and punch those numbers into what? Calculator. What is 3.14 times 9?
28.26.
And notice, they've already labeled this what? Inches. It's 28.26 inches. In other words, if I picked a point to start on this circle, and I walked all the way around the outside of the circle until I got back to where I started from, how far would I have walked? 28.26 inches. Are you with me? I'm going to come over here. And here they use a different formula. They use C equals 2 pi r. And the reason they use a different formula is what did they give me in this picture? They gave me the radius was 7. And you'll notice that down here, they've already put in the 22/7 for you. I would have picked it anyway. If I see that my radius or my diameter is a multiple of 7, I'm going to use 22/7 because it's easier to do the work. If I replace r, what am I going to replace r with? 7. What would happen to these 7s? They'd cancel out. What's 2 times 22? 44. In all fairness, which one was easier to work with? This one or this one? The second one was easier to work with because the denominator canceled out. And the only time that I want to use 22/7 is if my radius or my diameter was a multiple of what? If it's a multiple of 7, I would choose to use 22/7. If they don't specify, would it be wrong to use 3.14? No.
How did you get 44?
Because these 7's crossed out and 2 times 22 is what? 44. Make sense to everybody?
Yeah, but
Go ahead and ask the question.
never mind. But weren't you just dividing 7 and
Okay. This is what it says. 2 times 22/7 times
times, never mind.
7. This is over 1. This is over 1. And from numerator to denominator, what can I do? I can cross cancel, right? These go away. All my denominators become a 1, so I don't really need them. And I've got 2 times 22 times 1, which is why I get 44. Don't look at the board. Don't look at your notes. What's one of the formulas? Look at me. Look up. What's one of them? C equals pi d. What's the other one?
Oh, C equals
One.
C equals 5 fractions.
C equals what?
C equals 2 pi fractions.
Not 2 pi rationals, but 2 pi what?
R.
What does the D stand for?
diameter.
And what does the R stand for? Radius. These two formulas are essential to the work that we're doing today, and these two formulas will not ever be on the reference sheet ever again that I know of that you're going to see. They're formulas that you're expected to just know. Do you understand that?
They can have a
Page 268 and page 269. Seems like a lot of questions, but they're number crunching on a calculator, they're not hard.